At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
You know, Steven, it's all your fault. You came up with the Nikon Live title. I didn't type it originally. I typed it originally. But it's still your fault. It's still your fault that everybody's like, oh, it's clickbait, it's clickbait. You were like, I approve of this, Jared. I approve of this clickbait. Title. It's all your fault, Steven. It's all your fault. You're on thin ice, buddy. Thin ice. You're not really on thin ice.
It definitely is all your fault, Steven.
How is it all my fault?
I mean, you're the one who picked the title. I wrote the title. You just approved it.
I just simply responded with, yes, go with that.
Well, it was
actually,
the right
I think
title.
I was saying from the beginning, I'm like, it's a little negative. People are going to see it and assume that we're like bashing on Nikon right away.
I just thought it was like, I have other titles that I could have used, and it's doing okay. It's doing what other photo news fixes have done in the past in terms of views. And it's, we do want to get views, but we also want to get people to enjoy the content. And we knew going into it, when you say something like Nikon lied, that people are going to flip out, but they didn't. I love looking at comments like, this is clickbait. You clearly have a vendetta against Nikon. And I'm like, did you watch the video and see what they lied about?
Well, and the hard part is that we tend to have two different videos for the same thing. Like, we had the lens review right before it, 2 days before it, and then we did the photo news fix, which was also about the lens. So we can't reuse the same title, like, surprise, Nikon really, did this. We have to go with something different. That's why we went with Nikon lied.
And I went with Nikon lied because what did they lie about? They had a 200 to 600 on their roadmap for years, and they lied that they had a 200 to 600, and it's a 180 to 600, which is a good thing.
It's a good thing, yes. I think everybody misconstrued it, thinking that we were talking about the auto capture feature, and they lied about that when we were obviously talking about the lens, because we started off the story with Nikon lied.
In the third story, it's like, and finally, Nikon lied.
Yeah.
And it's like, but in a good way, right? And so that's like what you got to deal with, people in the comment sections.
Not even watching the video, just going right off the title.
Or misconstruing every statement that's made and doing what they did in The Simpsons, where you remember the clock in the background and the clock kept changing as they cut around everything. So the best is when people just take things out of context,
totally,
or without even listening or watching. They're like, why would I watch? Or someone's like, why don't you just name it what it is? And I was like, what? Nikon lied. That is what they did.
Unfortunately, you have to play the YouTube game, and we have to go a little on the sensational side when it comes to titles, borderline on that clickbait. But it's the name
We've
of the
always
game,
done that.
man.
We've always done that with photo news.
I hate it, but we have to play it. If you want YouTube to actually be a business for yourself, you really have to play that game, unfortunately.
But you also need to have the other content, which we do. Anytime we put up a user guide, it does really bad early, but in 5 years and 4 years, it does even better.
And we've even heard from big name YouTubers that don't like to play that game are like, well, I guess we have to start playing that game because even my normal titles are not working anymore.
Yeah, so I'm like a sounding board for a lot of people, and I soundboard off of other people too, but we all are in the same boat. We all are like, well, the views aren't the same if we do X, we need to try Y. Which brings up something that YouTube announced, that they announced officially, the split testing of thumbnails.
Yes.
Did they change anything? Because we were part of a test for this.
A beta test,
and we tried it out, and it was, for some videos, we already know what the thumbnail is going to be because we know it's going to work. And then other videos, I did try it, but it was a weird metric what they based everything on. In our testing, there was, the metrics didn't add up for me. I would think that A/B testing, which is split testing, what they mean by A/B means you put up an A thumbnail and a B thumbnail, or one thumbnail and two thumbnail. And then the system will determine through some factor which thumbnail is generating more of something. We don't know exactly what they're testing for, because in my mind, they would be the one that gets clicked the most would be the one that works. And in theory, from what we've heard, it's maybe not that metric, and it may be something else, which didn't make sense to me. So we'll have to do some more following up with the people at YouTube to see what it actually is. But we know thumbnails are important, but we also know titles are important. So is this the first indication that we're going to have split testing of titles?
Yes.
I hope we have split testing of titles. The better clicked title is more important, and thumbnail. I just wish that it was put up two titles, put up two thumbnails. YouTube serves out both instantly, and so within like 1,000 Within like a minute or 5 minutes, they'll know which one is already doing better, and then they could mix and match and put it in there.
And just like this would have been a perfect scenario for yesterday's fix, well, last week's fix at this point, when we put out Nikon Lite as the title. What if we put out Nikon Lite and then the second title being like, surprise, Nikon delivered this incredible product or something like that? I guarantee you the Nikon Lite would have done better.
Why didn't you come up with that yesterday, Steven? I might have thought about it.
Well, I went back and forth with you. I was like, it's kind of negative, so I'm not a huge fan of it, but I'm not saying it won't work.
Yeah, but when you watch the video, it's like, I'm positive.
You're super positive,
Our review of the 180 to 600 is very positive. I saw a lot of people were like, will you test it on the R6 and the R7? Well, I don't have the lens anymore, so maybe when we do get it, because there are people...
Z6 and Z7, by the way.
Yeah, the Z6 and the Z7, because there are people that obviously have those cameras, and they're not going to just go to a Z8 and a Z9 because they already bought these other cameras and they want to know how it works. So for them, I could do it.
I actually saw a lot of people asking if it works on the Z50, like multiple comments. I was surprised.
Well, why wouldn't it work on the Z50?
Well, exactly. Why wouldn't it work? But it's a super crazy long focal length on a crop sensor. I feel like that's overkill.
Well, it's no different than Sony having an A6600 and putting on there a 200 to 600.
Yeah. I just feel like with that aperture, you're going to be stopped down to like f9, f10 when you're putting on a crop sensor body.
Yeah, but when you have a crop sensor camera,
in terms of like the equivalent of the background blur.
When you have crop sensor, people have no clue. Like,
I
don't understand buying
wildlife and birds in particular. I know aperture doesn't really matter at all. Like, you're shooting pretty much in the sky, so it doesn't. If anything, you want to be stopped down. So I guess that does make sense. For what I shoot, I still prefer the more shallow depth of field, wide aperture.
I just want full frame all day. I mean, when I started back in the day, we only had crop sensors.
We're snobs, though.
Yeah, well, now we are. I mean, I realize that. I 100% realize that when people are like, what do you shoot with? I'm like, I got every kit and every lens. And I go back. But I go back to the times where I started, and my first camera was that EOS Elan 2E from Canon, and I had a 100 to 300 5.6 zoom lens, and that's all I had. And then I added some other... I think I may have added a 28 to 70 or something that was terrible. But when I got my first Nikon, I had a N90S, and I got the 80 to 200 2.8. That's all I had. People are like, you need to start wider. And I was like, but I'm going to shoot hockey. And I made my own decision, and I didn't listen to people. And I'm like, I'm shooting hockey. This is the lens I want. Then I added a 35 to 70 2.8, which had a macro setting. It was awfully weird, which was a push-pull. Not a great lens, but now I had a 35 to 70 and an 80 to 200. And then I got a 20 millimeter 2.8. That was the widest fixed I could get, and I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing.
Going from super tight full frame shots to crazy wide, nearly fisheye.
Yeah,
I feel like that's the beauty of shooting when you first start out. You're either going like crazy wide fisheye like, or super tight, cropping everything off.
So I mean, I worked my way up.
Of course.
I struggled and always wondered, how did these people come into Allen's when I was selling there to drop $12,000 in one fell swoop? But they did, because they worked and they made money. And so I worked my way from Allen's, and anytime there was a good used piece of gear, like an 85 1.4, I bought that. I bought a 105 1.4, 2.8 macro used. I got all this great used glass when I worked it out. It's a 12 to 24 DX 2.8. That was an F4, I think.
Yeah, most of my glass starting out was pretty much all used. I bought a lot of higher end glass off of Lens Rentals when they would resell I think Lens Authority they started, and they would resell all of the used lenses for like half the price. I bought a lot of stuff off there, but my first camera was a Rebel XT, which I borrowed from a friend's dad, and then I eventually graduated to an XTI or whatever the next camera was after that, and then worked my way up to pretty much what I'm at now, which is a 5D4 still, but I don't use that. I borrow the R5 from work all the time.
Yeah.
Do they still, by the way, have push-pull lenses? Are they still a thing in the mirrorless world? I don't think so, right? I mean, maybe with like the giant super telephoto lenses where you can still kind of push-pull and it has like lens creep.
Yeah, some of the Tamron and Sigma have like, you can pull it from the lens hood,
that's
which
not really
I find to be
meant
weird.
To shoot like that, but you can.
Yeah. No, but that's what they came up with. Anyway, banter is over. This is RAWtalk episode 57. This is a special edition episode where we Q&A. We Q to the A because Steven is away on vacation all week.
I'm on a beach somewhere drinking some beers, passed out. It's great.
Speaking of you going away, I'm going away. I'm going to go away. I'm going to pop to Chicago. I mentioned this last week. Going to stay with Manny for a day, shoot a Phillies game at Wrigley, and then I'm going to pop out to Las Vegas to do that slam ball stuff. Did you open your phone? You have your phone in front of you?
I do.
Open your phone. I sent you a message. It's not a dick pic. And it's not a girl.
Where did you send me a message?
To your Instagram.
Oh.
You open up your Instagram because it's a video of slam ball. They're practicing. Look at this. You tell me this isn't
slam
perfect.
ball? Because you send me some weird things.
Sometimes it's slam ball and sometimes it's slam ball. You see it?
I'm watching now, yeah.
Look at that. Look at that video. Isn't that cool?
So
is that perfect?
Basketball on a trampoline ground.
Basketball meets football because you can run into people, and then there's trampolines around the hoop area, and it creates high-flying entertainment, which is built for social media, but it's also built for amazing photography.
So it's for the kids,
These guys
basically.
are high-flying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's for fast action. I mean, the games are 12 minutes long, and they will be on ESPN. It didn't say Ocho. It said ESPN, Steven. So I think it's built for photos, man. I think it's really cool. It's high flying action. It is built for the social media people that want fast action and short attention span. That's why the games are 12 minutes. We'll see how it does. We'll see.
I think of it like the Globetrotters, but a whole new sport.
Man, the Globetrotters is a 2-hour thing of entertainment. When I shot that was very entertaining. The kids loved it.
But exactly, it's meant more for pure entertainment than an actual like game and sport. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a game there, but the high flying and hard hitting is what they're going for.
Cool.
And I'm just going to take some photos because I like working with these guys, and it's just another thing to shoot.
Anything to keep you busy. That's all that matters.
Busy is good. The last thing I want to do is be sitting here at the studio for a week. When do you come back, by the way? Because I realized Did you coordinate it in such a way that you don't come back till July 5th?
No. I'm coming back Monday, but obviously July 4th we have off.
That's Tuesday, right?
I think so, yeah.
So you're going to come back for one day?
I can't even afford to take another, more time off. I just really can't. I feel like we have so much stuff going on.
We do have a lot of stuff going on,
I'd love
Steven.
to, but yeah, I just don't think it's even possible.
What the hell are we going to do on that Monday?
Plan for the week at least, Okay. There's a lot to prep.
There is a lot. Oh, and moving.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Moving, and there's other stuff going on.
There's other stuff. Okay, let's get on to the special edition of Q&A where you guys submitted your questions to 313-710-9729. Welcome to the radio show. This is Jared and Steven. We are RAWtalk in the morning. This is the Nut Hut. And laying out the first song right here, we have Kelly Clarkson with Since You've Been Gone. Since You've Been Gone. Since You've Been Gone. I can't
that song still hits hard, though, I will say.
I'm so in love.
You know what a good cover of that is, by the way? Day to Remember.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's pretty hard.
I will tell you, I listened to the whole Creed album yesterday after a Creed song came on.
So good.
And it is so good.
I used to be obsessed with Creed when they were, at their highest.
Well,
I think I was like 7th grade, maybe.
You were younger, so you definitely were into that. I would take Creed over Nickelback. I think Creed has better music.
I think, I agree. I think Scott Stapp, the singer of Creed, I think he just put out another solo album recently.
Really?
The first solo album had actually one good song on it. Then he went nuts in 2008.
Well, then you have Alter Bridge.
He had a mental breakdown. Alter Bridge is literally
religious.
Creed without Scott Stapp.
Yeah, without Scott Stapp. But
not that
anyway,
I'm a fan or anything.
No, well, you were in the music world. I just thought that Creed album fucking banged and hit hard. Really terrible cover.
Human Clay?
Really terrible. Hold on.
I think Human Clay is their best album. It's got Higher and everything on there.
Oh, this is the one with Weathered.
Oh, Weathered's their last album.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, My Own Prison? I didn't listen. I just listened to Weathered because it was actually really good. So I need to listen to Human Clay and then My Own Prison. And
My Own Prison's pretty heavy, and then Human Clay is kind of like that alternative radio style.
Hold me now, 'cause I'm 6 feet from the edge and I'm thinking,
can you take me higher?
Yeah, Creed.
With
Dude, that music's
wide
so good.
open.
With legs wide open.
Hey-oh.
Underneath. Someone said that to me once, and then you can never hear it again with legs wide open.
I just remember they would always do the what was the series on MTV where they would have little clay figures fighting?
Oh, Deathmatch.
Is that what it was? Celebrity Deathmatch, right?
Celebrity Deathmatch.
And it would be like Pearl Jam's Eddie Vedder versus Scott Stapp because it was like the same voice. You stole my voice, and he ripped his tongue out.
That's a good one. Steven, can we get to the Q&A and you stop distracting us?
Right.
God damn it. God damn it. Can I say God damn it and not get in trouble?
Don't use the Lord's name in vain, Jared.
Jesus, is that you? All right, let's get into these Q&As. You guys submitted them via the text line, which is a great place to do it. Sorry if you're overseas and you can't use the text line because you can't use the text line.
Really? For what you pay, they don't allow that?
I just don't think it does international because it's not like, I don't know. I don't know how it works.
Interesting.
Because then it would be international texting. I don't know how it works, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm probably paying too much, but it is a good way to interact with people.
You do pay a lot. Yeah.
It's $150 a month, actually.
Oof, man.
It just is what it is, and that's only for like 2,500 to 5,000 people. I pay $1,000 a month for my email list, but I've been paying that amount for years because it's 210,000+ people on the email list, and you need to have a real email server people that are approved to send that, so it doesn't
handle that kind of volume. Yeah.
No, but it actually does very well. Email list has gone. The open rates have gone back up, which is nice. All right, let's get to this. We got Chris Williams. We're gonna read these and we're gonna ask. We're gonna try to answer them. Asks Chris Williams says, "Hey guys, just want to throw a discussion idea your way. I would love to hear what your ideal camera would be if you had the ability to pick and choose different parts of other manufacturers' cameras and combine them into one camera. Example being something like Canon's user interface, but Nikon's lens mount and Sony's sensors, something along those lines. Appreciate your time." You want to go with that, Steven? You want to run? You got some notes?
This is a super interesting question. Basically, he's asking if I could build my dream camera, what would I pick and choose from each manufacturer, correct?
Well, or what would your dream camera be? I mean, yeah, if you could pick and, yes, take things from other people. Leica. Just kidding.
Leica Q3, done. That's it. Perfect
Best
camera.
ever.
I think actually you should go first on this because I think I'm going to have a really winded answer.
All right. So for me, after all these years, I think Canon R3 feels the best in the hands out of the larger cameras.
Agreed.
So I'm going to go with an R3 body. I'm going to go still with the RF mount because I like the glass options. Would I like a 20? So I have a 28 to 70 f2. I know this is asked about the body, but I would love a 70 to 180 or an 80 to 200 or a 95 to 200 f2. That would be an awesome lens plus something much wider. But in terms of body, I want the 40 frames a second minimum of the R8, but with a stacked sensor. But I want like a similar sensor to what Sony has in the A1, in terms of 50 megapixels.
Yeah.
Because that's what the R3 is lacking, though the R3 is fantastic.
Agreed.
That shoots at 40 frames a second, that gives me pre-shooting for up to 2 seconds and post-shooting for up to 2 seconds, because I think that the future of photography is pre- and post-shooting.
Yep.
Because that's how, by the time you see it in the viewfinder and take the picture, you already missed it.
Mm-hmm.
I like that ability. Good battery life. I don't care about the video side of it. Personally, I'd be fine without it. I would love a a way to automatically record my EVF in the camera.
I was just going to say,
all of the data and information there, and audio recording from the camera while I'm shooting.
And it's a 4K signal on top of that, not a shitty compressed 1080p signal.
Right, even if it had to be like a little box that went somewhere on the camera that I could plug into, that would give me my dirty EVF recording with high quality, that would be ultimate for me. I mean, honestly, I don't think there's that much I would change from the R3 other than a more megapixel sensor that shoots faster with pre-shooting, and obviously tremendous autofocus that we already have today is good enough for the most part, and some other glass. That's me, Steven. That's what I see.
I have a similar setup. So I would also do a Canon R3 body with back button illumination, but more the back button illumination from like the Nikon Z9. I think there's a lot more buttons lit up. Canon says they have back button illumination, but there's not many. Anyway.
It's not very good.
Yeah, but I do think their body feels the best. It's a flagship vertical integrated grip body, but it's light. It's big, but not too big. It's not like a tank like the Z9 where it almost is too heavy.
Exactly.
It really is like the perfect body. And I think the rubber and the grip just feels great. It's not that plasticky feel like the Sonys.
You just got me thinking with the R3 that the screen doesn't flip out and rotate to the side. that it just flips down perfectly even to the back of the camera, but all the way flips down, and maybe all the way it does this flip, the 90-degree flip like the Nikon does, but then what the Nikon doesn't do is then have that flip out like a 5-axis freaking thing.
So yeah, that's kind of, you'll see that I'm having the same kind of screen with my setup. It's basically the A7R5 screen, but on steroids. Now I would have Sony's 61 megapixel BSI sensor. It would be stacked though, and it would be with Nikon's color science and Nikon's low base ISO of 64. And on top of that, throw in a global shutter. Why not? Let's go nuts.
I mean, whatever. If that's even a thing, I don't know.
My dream camera, you know?
Yeah.
This is a camera that's probably coming out in 20 years.
There's not much to change about these cameras right now. They are so good. And obviously AI technology is going to continue to improve. But from a shooting standpoint, I just want a few more tweener frames per second. A few more just for when I need it, but that's really it. Pre and post shooting.
I agree, but if I could again pick and choose from each manufacturer, I think there is a lot of stuff that each manufacturer does really well, and if I could pick and choose, that would be ideal. So I would take Canon's autofocus with dual Digic-X processors to make it a crazy fast camera. Maybe even throw in the rumored quad pixel AF. It would be 30 frames per second raw, or 40. Why not? Let's go to town. Along with pre-shoot bursts, like you said, with the ability to have zebras and stills. Because for some stupid reason, Canon still only allows it in video mode, and I wish it was in stills, so I don't have to use a histogram every time to check my exposure or just the basic meter. It would have dual CF Express B cards from the Z9, the instant on and off feature, and the sensor shield from the Z9 as well, and Z8. Canon's menu with Nikon's on-off quick toggles. I really like that Nikon does that, where I don't have to go deep in the menu. I can just simply quickly click on and off instead of having to go into that menu option, then hit off, then get out of it. Sony's button customization, I think they do the best with that, where they literally let you customize any button with any feature, where Canon's and Nikon's, they're still a little limited. A7R5's flipping, tilting touchscreen, like you said, it would flip down perfectly, tilt, and then it would also flip out on top of that. I think that is the perfect touchscreen. But like you said, also almost combined with the Nikon, where it's like that 4-axis tilting on top of that. So when you're vertical shooting low, I think that's really interesting. Sony's FX3 video features with the new AI video options from the ZVE1. It'll be 4K oversampled from 8K and have ProRes HQ, the ProRes HQ from the Z8 and Z9. I love that Nikon does that. And then it'll have the 8-stop IBIS from the A7R5 with its optical active mode stabilization. It's like a freaking gimbal sometimes, man, when you're shooting video with that thing. It's so smooth. And then the dual USB-C ports from the Z8 and Z9. Again, if I could pick and choose from all three, this would be my ideal setup. It would be a dream camera. And there's some stuff thrown in there like a global shutter that just probably would never exist, but you never know.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. We've got Marv's Revis. I wanted to pick your business mind because I love how creative you can be when it comes to the business side of photography. So my situation is I'm getting married in August, small wedding with just me and my fiance. And to make a little extra cash, I was planning to sell my 3 Fuji Prime lenses. I feel like that's the easiest way to make some extra cash, but I still think that there's some opportunities out there to make the money I'm looking for by using these lenses instead of selling them. So my question is, what advice you might have to make money using my camera? Google search gives me things like stock photos. Don't do that. Set up my family photo shoots or selling prints. But I wanted to see if you had better suggestions, like maybe do a product shoot for a company since they can offer more money, or some other ideas. Thank you for your time. Long-time listener, first time writing in. I mean, this is an interesting question. How are you going to make money with your camera if you sell your lenses? You got to make money with your camera and your lenses. It's not the most difficult thing in the world when you break it down to some of the simple terms. Look, if you're afraid to get the gig, that's one thing. But here are things that you can do to make money with your camera. Stock photography, not one of them. Stock photography is dead as dog shit. I would never do it at this point.
Making next to nothing, like pennies per photo.
You're not going to make anything with stock. Yeah. But you can photograph kids, for their parents. You can do family parties. You can shoot any get together. There you could photograph dogs, right? So you could photograph dogs at the dog park. So if you have a dog, go to the dog park, take your camera there, photograph your dog at the dog park. There's always people, like literally a dog is like a fishing pole, because you could also get women, which is surprising why I don't have a dog, but because then I could be like, what?
And I think event photography in general, I mean, I think that's, like you said, like a kid's birthday party or something. I think people are always willing to pay for that. It's kind of an easy gig to do as well in terms of like quick cash. It's just, do you want to deal with people or not? That's the biggest thing. Do you work well with people? Are you a landscape photographer trying to make money? Because that's tough.
That's tough. But what I would do with the dog thing, if you have a dog, is you go to the park, you take pictures of the dog, and then other people are like, oh, what are you doing? And then you show them awesome pictures, because your work has to be good in order to sell it generally. Not always, but it doesn't hurt. So you show them the stuff and you're like, I could take some photos of your dog, and why don't I do this? Blah, 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 right? And maybe you just do it for them for nothing the first time, but then other people start looking, and you set up a thing where you do dog photos out at the park, and you charge $50, $100, $200, depending on what it is. Some of that may lead to doing family pictures. Like, oh, we need a full family picture with my 2 kids who also play sports. Why don't you come out and shoot sports? It all leads to somewhere. Now, in terms of setting up doing product shots for a business, you just got to go to these businesses and offer up your services, show them what you're capable of, and then it leads to money. But for me, it sounds like you're a little afraid of getting paid, or maybe the rejection of not getting the gig, but you can't be afraid of that. There's so many no's that come out there, but then there's also sometimes a yes. You got to get through the no's to get the yeses, and you can't be discouraged when that happens. That's why I ask out every woman I meet, because if you get
and they all
no's,
say no,
you may get a yes. And that's where Steven's like, well, what, did you ask the dude?
You said it, not me.
You were thinking it. You got anything to add on to this before we move on to Kai?
I think what you said is pretty spot on. I know a lot of quote unquote button pushers that are great business people, and they just really put themselves out there and get a ton of gigs, although they're terrible photographers in my opinion. I think you need to be more of a business person than a photographer if you really want to make money in this field, unfortunately. I think the business outweighs the creativity. Again, at the end of the day, if you're a decent photographer, people don't know any better half the time. They'll hire you. You just need to really do a good job at marketing yourself and branding yourself and getting your name out there.
Yep. All right. We've got Kai. Sigma Chi. Phi. Kai. Road trip, Steven?
I was just going to say road trip.
What'd you do? Kill a cheetah? I boinked
Wasn't
her.
it a black only fraternity or something, and they all show up as white guys?
Yeah, and they're like, well, we know the secret handshake. And then they're like, what is this? This is a
we found
KKK
this white hood in your backpack.
It's like, no, it's not mine. Then he passes out, and then he meets the woman with the
cheetah,
massive, and he's like, I boinked her. Yeah, that movie, I haven't
still
watched it.
Holds up, dude.
It's pre-cell phone, so they didn't really have cell phones, but Austin, Massachusetts.
Boston, Texas.
Oh my God. Tom Green, who was just hanging out with Gerald Undone recently.
Really? He's a Canadian, isn't he?
He's a Canadian, eh?
Fellow Canadian, yeah.
All right, Kai. Hi, Jared. I'm a 17-year-old photographer, filmmaker. I hope you had your parents' permission to submit this. In San Diego, LA area. I've started shooting some concerts recently through my high school newspaper via the Live Nation press portal. I didn't even know they had a press portal.
I didn't either, yeah.
But since my school is small, have only been accepted for smaller shows. I'm looking to shoot larger shows through more official media outlets and or directly through bands, and was wondering how I should reach out to them. I believe my portfolio is professional enough where my work quality wouldn't be much of a factor, but more of my young age and career inexperience. My website is, I'm not going to give it because he's underage, if you're interested. I'm going to go click on this and look at it, because if it's terrible, I'm telling you, Kai, that you suck. You don't suck. There's some good stuff here, actually, right off the rip. I can see that. Oh, so not bad right off the rip. Actually, some really nice stuff here. Pusha T, Kodiak Black, Patti Smith, Kendrick Lamar.
Some big names.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in here. Lil Uzi Vert.
Wow, look at this. I just looked up the press portal. This was definitely not a thing even a few years ago. You can literally submit a press request for a press pass via this portal. All you do is simply insert your location, and you can even search by artist if you wanted to, and then you hit submit press request. That's awesome. If we had this back in the day,
we had to make phone calls.
Yeah, phone calls, emails, all of that.
So knowing that your work doesn't suck, which is a good thing, one of the things that you can do is you can find a younger artist that is on the up and coming, and you can start messaging them on Instagram. Don't ask for something right off the bat, but just see who's coming to town. Start striking up conversations with people via social, even if it means leaving comments on their stuff and just interacting so that you come up to the top and they see your name. We're not talking about artists with 20 million followers. We're talking about people that are smaller, maybe 40, 50,000, 60,000, and it's artists that you might like that may end up opening for another larger artist. Those are the people that you start to get in with. Now, it's really good that you're using your small school newspaper or publication or blog, whatever the school does at this point, to be your outlet.
It's great.
What you also need to do is maybe create your own outlet that you not make pretend is big, but you create your own outlet that showcases. You do some writing, right? You do reviews of every show. You just talk about new albums or music, whatever you want to talk about, put it there. So if you build up a big backlog of stuff on your website, which is what we should have done with Fuzz Magazine back in the day, instead of trying to make a website, an actual magazine
Physical
in 2005, 2006, we should have been blogging. We should have been blogging back then. But whatever, we learned. I made Frono's Photo. I'm successful now. But anyway, that's what we should have done. And I learned that the hard way through School of Hard Knocks. You know, getting in with publications is not always the easiest, but what you can do is reach out to different online publications that may have some clout, right? Consequences of Sound. I don't know what all the other, I don't follow any of them, but reach out to their people and be like, hey, I'm in this area. If I do shoot a show and submit images to you, can I use you as an affiliate or as my affiliation? And so that's how you go about it. Yeah, what do you got, Steven?
I actually used to shoot with a kid that started his own like website for music news, and it was a total half-assed website, and he would blog nonstop, talk about music news, but nobody ever commented, he didn't get any hits, but since it looked like an official website,
exactly,
he went via that website and shot for the website, acting like it was a main source, for music news and stuff like that, but in reality it really wasn't, and he got into big shows, like I'm talking arena concerts, stuff like that. Yeah. But I would just say, if you go directly to the label too, if you do reach out to them, which is tough to do, but if you do go to them, they usually oversee the bands and they are the head honcho and they can really get you in. I had the access because of the radio station. So I had direct access to the labels. I had their personal phone numbers. I could get a hold of them if I was there. And that's how I got in on it. But radio stations are pretty much dead these days. So it's hard to say go through a radio station.
Bobby Silver, Bobby Gale,
Bobby Silver. Yep.
Silver. It was Silver?
Mm-hmm. Legendary rep.
Super connector. When we needed something to shoot, she was the one that you talked to.
Yeah, I mean, she was with the biggest of the big back in the day. She would tell me all these stories about being backstage with like Nirvana, with Guns N' Roses, all kinds of epic bands that, are just legendary at this point now. So she really knew everybody, and it was just really cool to hear these stories from her. She still sends me, by the way, a personal message every year for my birthday. And, I had contact with her, but I wasn't like great friends with her, but just because I worked with her and saw her a lot through the radio station, we did become friendly. But she's just the nicest lady.
So it's always good to get in with different people, but I think building your own site to make it look like you're doing music and that you have some reach is good. It's a little harder today because I'll look at social media and be like, oh, you don't have a big following on Instagram.
Followers.
But no, your work is fine. Actually, your work is good. So I think if you want to do bigger shows, you start to get in with opening acts. I've always say reach out to them directly. Mm-hmm. Opening acts, follow them, talk to them, engage with them. That's how you get some ins, and then that takes you to the bigger show. So, all right, we got Benson Crawford. I bought my R6 over a year ago and haven't taken more than 300 shots with it since then after trading in Nikon gear. I have a bit of a dormant photography spell for a while, and I really want to get back into it. Any ideas for projects or anything to help motivate to get back into the game? I've said this time and time again. Study the classics and look at what photographers before you have done. That always seems to inspire me and get me out of a funk when I've seen what like Gordon Parks was doing, Jim Marshall, all of these old, like Avedon. You can look at photographers that you may not even like and just see the work that they've done. Like I'm not a big Diane Arbus fan. I don't find that work to be my personal style. That doesn't mean that it's not good work, and what she was doing, embedding herself with certain communities in the 70s was insane. She got some great stuff for storytelling, but there's always that's what I do to get out of a funk. I mean, you just got to get out there and shoot. That's really the answer to this. You got to get out there and shoot, but give yourself a story to go and capture. Force yourself to get out there. You got to find it. And we've all been in that funk before, and you just got to force your way through.
Well said.
Okay, Steven, I see how you are. Don Mayers, because we got to move through these so we can get to more of them. Don Myers, Meyers, 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 Meyers. 59 years old. I put that in there for whatever reason. What is the best way to use a second card slot? Backup or overflow? Video only? Question marks. Now, the reason I put his age in there is because sometimes we have to remember not everybody started in the digital era, and not everybody has the start to know everything. So I have to keep reminding myself, because I'm so far away from being a beginner, that there is basic stuff that
everybody starts somewhere.
Right. Right. Like I didn't know to shoot RAW back in the day, even though I did shoot RAW plus JPEG because no one knew what it meant. Anyway, the way that I do it with the second card slot is it's redundant no matter what. So ever since I've had 2 card slots, I put one card in one card in the other, and I do it as redundant. So RAW files to the card 1, RAW files get copied to card 2. It's redundant. Now with some cameras, most cameras, you can do redundant video recording. So if you have the ability to do recording to both, not Nikon. Steven, don't say anything. You can't say the N word. Nikon. You can't say that. No, I can say that, Steven. It's Nikon. You know what I was saying, Steven. I know. So anyway, redundant. The whole point of it, like, it doesn't make sense to do overflow. And I know there's those people who said, but what if you're working for a client? You shoot RAW to one in JPEG and deliver them to JPEGs. Well, it's real easy to shoot RAW and JPEG to the same card and then just click file type when you get into the computer and drag those JPEGs to something else.
Exactly. That's what I would usually do. Keep in mind, too, there are firmware updates for certain memory card companies, like ProGrade, for example. They actually do firmware software updates for their memory cards because they have to tell the memory card basically to allow it to record new codecs that these new cameras are coming out with. Where back in the day, it didn't really matter because every camera had the same codecs. But now all these new cameras are coming out with different RAW forms and stuff like that. Because we ran into that issue a few times with not realizing you had to update the firmware for a memory card.
Yeah, it's a new world when it comes to that. Yeah. So that's something you should check with, whether you use Lexar, SanDisk, ProGrade, Sony, that there are new firmware needs to be there so that the cameras can talk to it so it doesn't corrupt it. All right, we got Greg. Just Greg. I don't know why it's just Greg. Whose work has influenced you the most? Honestly, there really wasn't many. Oh, good job, Jared. Way to put notes right in there. Nice job. I'll get to that in a minute.
I can read your answer for you. I see the notes.
I guess that was the question. Whose work has influenced you the most? And I already put my notes here. The truth is, at the very beginning, I wasn't influenced by anyone because it was pre-internet. Yes, Steven, I was the best. I was 13. I didn't know anything. I didn't ever go to a library. I didn't think that was the thing to do. Like I don't know why that never crossed my mind to go pick up a book. Reading Rainbow didn't even associate with me, but no, I never did. So there was a photo on my wall that was taken of my mom in 1976 where she is a paralegal or just working at an office. She wasn't a paralegal, but she was just working as a receptionist at a lawyer's office in Philly. And there was this beautiful candid photo that was taken of her that I think resonates with me to this day as liking candid behind the scenes images, because that's exactly what that one was. It's a gorgeous photo. I have it blown up because actually when I took the image out of its frame to scan it and I flipped it over, I didn't know this, but my mom wrote a note to my dad on the back.
Oh, wow.
She gave him the photo, and it's like a love letter, a love note about whatever, and it wasn't like Tinder or anything, so it's totally different. If someone wasn't here downstairs doing measurements, I would have told you what the note said that I would have made up off the top of my head, but I'm trying because someone's here. I don't even though all these people are listening.
PC Jared.
I don't want to do it live. I know. I'm self-editing, self-censoring before I even do it. But no, I found this photo. This on the back of the photo was written this note, and so I had the image enlarged, and then I had the back of it. I took a photograph of and printed, and it's on the back of the paper on the back of the print, right? I on the framed print, so that both are there. I thought that was fantastic. I was influenced by that, but more so now in the modern era, guys like actually early on it was Bruce Bennett. I was 13 or 14 in high school, and there was this little publication from Unique Photo, and they were featuring this guy, Bruce Bennett, standing on the ice, shooting the Devils after a game, this photo of him. And I was like, I want that white lens. That was a Canon 70-200. I'm like, I want to do that. I want to be like that guy. Now I don't want to be like Bruce Bennett because he's King Cropper. He's shot 43 or 44 Stanley Cups now. He's been shooting since the 70s. And I love Bruce. Bruce is one of my favorite people in the world. Love having conversations with him. So I can say that he inspired me.
We did an interview with him actually on the ice a few years back.
On the Flyers bench.
On the Flyers bench, yeah. And if you guys are interested in that, just search up Bruce Bennett, Jared Polin. I'm sure you'll find it somewhere. But it's been, what was that, like 6-7 years ago? It
may have been a long time ago. That was the first time he and I actually met.
He was so cool. Then, such a nice guy.
Well, I was always told that Bruce was an asshole.
Well, you guys were like breaking each other's balls too. It was great.
But right off the bat, no, because I got him.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I got him, and he gets me, and I get the business stuff, and I don't see that he's not an asshole. He's a business person, and I love Bruce to the nth degree, and I'll bust his balls repeatedly. But more in the modern era, like. I love people like Gordon Parks. Gordon Parks, I think, is one of the most incredible photographers in the history of photography, especially when it comes to photojournalism. HBO has a Gordon Parks documentary, or Max, but HBO has a Gordon Parks documentary that I do highly suggest you check out. It's fantastic. I have the Gordon Parks anthology of education books that are awesome. His work is so god-darn good. Just go follow him. It's the Gordon Parks Foundation. Google it. He's awesome. Jim Marshall was another guy that I realized influenced me without me knowing who he was, because the style of work that he did in the 60s, 70s, late 50s with jazz musicians, the 60s at Woodstock, and all of like Rolling Stone in the 70s, and not Rolling Stone magazine, even though he did do that. Janis Joplin, he was the guy. He was the shit. He was the guy that everybody looked to. Look him up. And Arnold Newman, I just love from a portrait standpoint that Arnold Newman would do these environmental portrait type images that just look incredible. That's what I got. Steven, how about you?
A lot of music-based photographers, like you said with Jim Marshall. For me, it was more of the new age ones, like Danny Clinch was a big one for me coming up. And now, in the beginning, I didn't look up to anyone. I didn't know any better. But when I really got involved with the radio station and shooting concert photography, Danny Clinch was probably number one for me.
So when you met Danny Clinch, when we did that interview at his studio.
We eventually met him and did an interview at his studio. He showed us a lot of the original prints and stuff. Really nice guy.
I became friends with him now.
Yeah, you still keep in touch with him a lot.
All the time.
Other music photographers like Todd Oyoung, I don't know how you say it. Yeah, so now he's like an ambassador. Back in the day, he wasn't, but he shot a lot of shows. I think his website was like ishootShows.com or something.
It was.
And I always really liked his work. Same with like people like Adam L. Macias back in the day when he was with like A Day to Remember. But he did a lot of commercial work for like music magazines and record labels and stuff like that. So he was not only doing concert photography and like environmental portraits and stuff like that, but he was also doing more commercial stuff on the side for magazine covers, which I thought was really interesting and unique. But I want to get back to Bruce Bennett though. Do you remember when we were at Photo Plus with him, like walking around?
Yeah.
And he was like your sidekick and making fun of you the whole time.
He was there because people kept handing him the camera. No one knows.
He's like, look at this guy. He's so famous.
Well, very few people know Bruce Bennett.
Yeah, they'd be like, hey, can you take a picture of me and Jared? And they would give the camera to Bruce.
He's like, how's this work?
Yeah, how's this work? He would joke about not knowing how to use a camera.
Yeah, well, you left one off the list.
Who?
Me!
Yeah, I guess.
All right, moving on. We've got Shane Brandt. I'm considering selling my Nikon DSLR trifecta and buying the Nikon Z trifecta. Other than money, is there any benefit to staying with my DSLR lenses?
Nope, moving on.
Not really. I just always found, and this is me saying this, that adapted lenses on the Nikon weren't as good as adapted Canon lenses on Canon mirrorless. So EF to RF, I felt adapted better than F to Z. And yes, the Nikon lenses that are native, if you have, it sounds like you have a Nikon mirrorless camera, are going to be a much better option. I also would still probably throw out there, if you're going to dump your DSLR Nikon trifecta, maybe look at a new system. I will just say that because I think that even though Canon doesn't have a trifecta fully, they do have the 28 to 70, they do have the 24 to 70, 70 to 200, they don't have the ultra wide. But if you're going to stick with Nikon, 14 to 24, 24 to 70, 70 to 200, very good. And they now have the more affordable trifecta of whatever the Tamron lenses are, you can get for basically in Nikon branding with a 70 to 180 2.8, the 28 to 70, and then they have a wider that I don't recall exactly what it is.
It's like a 17 to 28, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
So think about that. Can I skip that now that I answered it and go to the next one?
Yeah.
Deb Wolf. Now, I did put a number here again 67. Tips for using an LCD screen to achieve the sharpest focus a given lens and camera body combination can achieve, including the use of a loop. So I'll just say, and the reason I pick this is I don't know if there's confusion, or maybe I'm reading it wrong, or it's not explained well. But generally speaking, there should be no reason to use the back of the screen as your viewfinder.
What if it's a camera without a viewfinder?
Well, that's then go Wi-Fi, right? Then go Wi-Fi if it's a Canon. If it's a Canon or Sony or Nikon, you can use an iPad. You don't need a loop anymore because you can wirelessly do that.
Wait, what are you talking about? They're talking about using a loop on the back of the screen.
No, I know what they're talking about using, but I'm saying if it's too small on the back of the screen, you can use the iPad to wirelessly connect and tap where you want it to focus. The best way to focus today is allow that autofocus to lock in on that eye, which every system is going to do today. So the way that I take this question is you shouldn't be using the LCD screen to do any focusing or any looking if you have an EVF.
Now, again, if they didn't have an EVF, I do understand using a loop, because then you can at least have your 3 points of stabilization and hold it up to your eye while your elbows are still resting against your stomach.
Well, that's what we did with the
better.
Well, that's what we did with the Canon 1DX Mark III when that came out.
Exactly.
Remember, I was shooting stills because it didn't have an EVF because it was a mirrorless. It was a
the
DSLR, but I would flip the mirror
Yep.
out, and then I had the loop attached to the back, and I shot it like a mirrorless camera, and I was like, "This is a mirrorless. This is insane."
I hope people aren't watching that video thinking that's how you should be shooting.
Yeah, well, that's an old. I probably mentioned that in the past.
I hope, yeah. Unless she's talking about video too. I mean, you could shoot with a loop with video. That kind of makes sense, but I don't know. I still would be using a viewfinder or something like that.
Yeah. Well, if it does come to, if she's really talking about video, then yes, a loop on the back would be good.
So the next one, I'll take this one on. Chris asks, what is something that you believe the major camera manufacturers, i.e. Canon, Sony, Nikon, etc., are missing in their products that you would like to see or that you would do differently? Now, in my opinion, I would like to see more functionality, almost for it to be more like a phone in some way, like maybe having a separate app-driven interface that you could switch to if you're not using the actual camera, where I can upload directly from the camera to somewhere like Facebook or Flickr or wherever you want to upload to. I mean, imagine being able to switch into this phone mode from the menu system, and it now turns your camera basically from a camera into somewhat of a phone interface with these apps, and being able to maybe like magnetically disconnect the screen and then use it almost like a little mini tablet or phone and upload directly to, again, like, or even Lightroom, have maybe a mini Lightroom to edit off of or something like that. I just think it would be interesting for cameras to finally start introducing these phone-like options in a camera, because it's such a pain to directly connect and have to transfer things to your phone or to the computer or whatever it may be if you're trying to upload them immediately right away.
Yeah, so you're talking about that Samsung camera that came out years ago that people seem to like. Talking about when DP Review called the Samsung NX whatever, that line of cameras, the best thing ever. Now, it was an early mirrorless, but it had technologies that could have made it, but they ended up killing that system.
Yeah.
Because remember at that thing, you could trade in any camera and they would give you that Samsung body
Yeah,
and
what was
kit
that
for
show
free.
called? It was DP Review's show.
Garbage. It was called Garbage. It was called...
You were like the host of it, kind of.
I was invited out there, and it was absolute terrible. It was their first one that they were doing, and it was their last one that they did.
Wasn't it like
they tried to do
Awards or something?
I don't recall.
Yeah.
It was just terrible. Gouging, I guess is the guy's name. I don't know. If you were to relocate to another country, start your local photography business, what country would it be? I would go to Paris, I guess.
I have no idea where I would go.
I would go to Paris. Gay Paris.
I'd maybe relocate to Puerto Rico for tax purposes, and that's about it.
Oh,
like what F-stoppers did?
You want to escape that? I mean, they've probably saved millions in taxes.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
The loophole is if you go to Puerto Rico and you start a business, you bring your business there, there's incentives where you, for whatever reason, you don't pay federal tax. So if you make $1 million, and generally speaking, if you make $1 million, you're probably giving about $350,000, $375,000, $400,000 in taxes because your tax bracket's like 40%. They are skipping out on that because for whatever reason, there's a loophole that if you live there and you move your business there, you don't owe federal tax. It's bullshit. But it's one of those things that maybe you do it for 10 years and you save $300,000 a year for 10 years is $3 million.
Then you retire.
It's a pretty good savings.
Yeah. Are they still there, by the way, F-stoppers?
Yeah, they both have families. They both got married. They both have kids.
I remember they did that entire COVID series where they documented every single day and did like a live journal and did a live stream. It was pretty interesting.
James, with vlogging kind of dying despite these camera companies pushing vlog cameras, do you think that instant photography could have a resurgence as younger populations stray away from DSLRs and mirrorless digital cameras? I know a lot of people that are getting very much into instant photography instead of point and shoot, and the technology's aesthetic are moving beyond those Instax, big bubble, plastic cameras with more offerings from the likes of Lomo and Fuji. I think for the last 5-6 years, the Instax has been really doing well with people that want to try and do instant photos, but you're not doing instant photos from a creative standpoint, in my opinion. You're doing instant photos to get instant gratification of you and your friends having a party. Someone handed me it. So I was at this coffee shop down the street from here, and there was a group that wanted to do a group photo. I'm like, hey, do you want me to take it? Because I always do that. So like, sure. She hands me this camera. They're like, it's a Polaroid. I'm like, no, it's an Instax. There's a difference. And it had a screen on the back.
You have to shake it after it comes out.
Yeah, but it had a screen on the back. I'm like, what the fuck kind of Instax is this? She's like, oh, you take the picture first before it prints. I'm like, that's stupid. That defeats the whole purpose. And then I slammed it against the ground, stomped on it 24 times, and said, screw you. If there wasn't someone here right now, I would have told them to go fuck themselves. But I said, screw you. No, I took the picture for them, and then I guess it prints out on the Instax, which I said defeats the whole purpose of instant film.
It really does, yeah. But
because I took the picture once, and she's like, "Oh, can you redo it?" And I was like, "Sure."
Oh, so you shouldn't be redoing it. That's the beauty of the instant gratification of it
point.
printing out right then and there. It's not perfect.
That's the point, Steven.
And now, just like vinyl, I mean, I could see kids getting into it for, again, the tangible physical experience and instant gratification. I think Instax is great. I was all about it a couple years ago when it like first kind of came out, and I even bought like the mini side printer and everything. But I will say I never use it anymore.
Well, they still send us cameras from time to time. I used to like taking them to birthday parties.
I think it's great.
And I would take probably 4 packs of film, and I would go around and get pictures of each person or each group, and then I'd throw that on a table, right? And then at the end, you could take a real picture of all of those, but also I left it there that was my gift, was the gift of photography. I came, took the pictures of the party with the Instax, left it there for the party people to enjoy later.
So I kind of did something similar. It was my niece's like first birthday party. My sister-in-law rented out a whole hall for it, and I had a little photo corner set up where there was a backdrop and everything. And what I did is I shot with, at the time, I think it was my 5D Mark IV, and then I had the little side printer that you can print Instax from. So I would connect to the iPad,
which is cool.
Transfer the pictures to the iPad, then use the Instax app in there to then print it immediately. So I both had digital photos that I posted an album after the fact, along with physical, tangible prints right then and there that they took home. The only issue was it's super expensive to film. Like it's like $20.
$1 a shot.
$1 a shot, yeah, $20 for 20 exposures. So
sometimes it's 85 cents, but it may have gone up since
she probably spent almost $200 just in buying the actual instant film. So it does get pretty pricey, but it was really unique and interesting. And this is a couple years back, you know. So at the time, people didn't even know this was an option. They assumed it was Polaroid, and they thought it was really, really cool, especially the kids seeing it right then and there.
Yeah. All right, moving on here. We've got Zachary. If you were to start a new photography-based YouTube channel in 2023, knowing what you know, would you start with the gear-related videos to gain the views, or with tutorials and not worry about views while you build your small community?
That's tough.
Well, the answer to that is gear is the one way to do it, because if no one knows you exist, they're not going to find you making videos about some BS. But if you do make tutorials, you make sure that you hit the keywords that are going to be searchable, things that people might look for, how to take low light pictures, how to do astrophotography, the basics that might get people interested. And there, if you do have gear, then you can start doing it. But what you shouldn't do is do videos where you just sit at a desk and hold a microphone and talk to it. That is the dumbest thing you could ever do. You need to make sure that if you say it, you show it. At the very least, if you're going to sit at your desk, show examples of what you're talking about. But more importantly, get out into the real world, do actual shoots, because if you're just a talking head behind a computer holding a microphone, no one's going to give a shit because those videos are absolute garbage. Yeah. So I've gotten into that in the past.
I was going to say, we were stuck in that for a minute a few
in
years back.
2015, 2016. Yep. I was just doing these talking head videos to get them out. And they sucked. And that's why people wouldn't watch them.
You were more about quantity over quality back then.
Right. I wanted to keep up with that video a day.
Yep.
But the key is, if you say it, you show it, but get out into the world and showcase it, because there's nothing worse than watching a quote unquote YouTube photographer talk about their photography and they never show their work.
Yeah.
Agreed. And all they do is talk. Ira. What's up, Ira? My question is, how do you personally make contacts that you to get you into special events like Major League Baseball, games, concerts, or the Bernie Sanders campaign? This is very similar to what we said up above. And by up above, I mean earlier in this podcast. For the guy, it's up above on my list.
You're being literal because it's up above the,
I'm always
the screen
literal,
that you're looking
Steven.
at right now.
I'm always literal. It's very similar to having an affiliation. You need an affiliation. You're not getting into Major League Sports without an affiliation. Yep. It's just that simple today. You're just not getting in. Minor League Baseball you can get into. The way you get into Major League is you get into the minors, just like the players need to do. You go and you shoot for the Iron Pigs, which is an actual team. You go and you shoot for these minor league teams that have affiliations with Major League teams. I knew a kid who I used to ref hockey with and play hockey with who went and was like a ticket person at one of the minor league teams that was affiliated with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So he started in the ticket office. Then they moved him up to another position. Then he got moved up to another position. Then he graduated to work for the Penguins in like some sub role.
He put
right?
the
Not
work
a
in.
major role,
Yeah.
but he was like assisting to someone who had a different role and not playing or anything. And then when that person left, he graduated to take their position, which was he was in charge. Oh, I remember what he was doing. He was like assisting reviewing film, right? So he had to make sure that he got the game footage and then got that to the coaches so that they could learn from it after each game and after each practice. So he was in charge of that. Then he became in charge of helping with making sure that the visas for players coming from overseas were taken care of, then taking care of hotels and flights and making sure all of that was done for the team. And so he had a really good position. And what happened when I saw him on TV the one time was he was holding the Stanley Cup.
Wow.
Because he was part of the travel team. He had something to do with the team. And he's there raising the Stanley Cup.
Did you imagine
and
that?
I'm like, that's this kid. And now he has like 2 rings, right? And also he was a goalie. So what did he do? He would have his gear at work. And on occasion, he'd put on the pads, go out on the ice when the players wanted to take extra shots and the goalies were done, and he'd go into goal and play against Crosby and Malkin and all of these world-class players, even though Malkin's a little bitch with his complaining, and so's Crosby. He's a little biatch with his complaining, but one of the greatest players of all time and a great combination. You got to give respect where respect is due. But he would go in goal and do that stuff. He worked his way up from the minors and ended up holding the Stanley Cup twice.
But that's exactly it. Like you said, you're working your way up from the bottom to the top. He put all the work in himself. It doesn't happen overnight. And the biggest thing, like I kind of relate it to you as well. Like you built your empire and it led you here. It led you to these opportunities like meeting Bernie Sanders and filming him, to shooting MLB baseball games. I mean, without putting in the years of work being in the public eye, none of these opportunities would have presented themselves to you. They all know you from basically your YouTube career. But
I mean, not
again,
everybody,
you started with 0 views, 0 followers and subscribers, and now you're here.
Not everybody can start shooting for Rolling Stone as a teenager like me and
a
getting
professional
right to the
photographer
top,
at 13 years old.
13 years old. There was a question, and I don't know if it's in here or not, but it was like, weren't you scared doing your early jobs that what if you messed up? And the answer is, one of my early jobs I did, and they never called me again. Like I did such a bad job for Beckett magazine, sports. It was the monthly magazine.
What,
I talked my way
a 13-year-old?
Well, they hired. I was like 15. My mom drove me for the first event. It was at the Franklin Institute. She drove me there. It was like history of video games, and so it had early video games you could play and all the consoles and stuff. And I was to do the photos to accompany the article. Photos not very good. Anyway, they sent me out to a second job, and I had to use slide film this time. I never used slide film, and I had to use a flash, and obviously I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. They never called me again. because I really sucked. I wasted their time. I was a kid. I wasn't ready, but it wasn't digital. I also
Did you
didn't
have
know
to give
I
them
got
just negatives, or did you have to?
I had to send them the film, and they developed it. It was slide film.
They get the negatives back. It's just completely blown out.
It
like
was
pure
probably
white.
such garbage. It was so amateur-y. But yeah, I was a kid. I wasn't ready, but they sent me, and I got there. But that's what happens. You screw up. You don't get a job.
You live and you learn.
But
yep.
You got to start somewhere, and you keep going from there. Morning, y'all. My question is, Fro, on your podcast and YouTube, you always mentioning and showing off your physique. In the future, would you ever try a triathlon?
Of course, you picked this question.
Thanks from Pierre R. No, the answer is I will not do a triathlon. Steven, do you know what consists of a triathlon?
3 things.
Yeah, but do you know what the distance is of those 3 things without Googling it? It's like a 2.2 or 2.1 mile swim. It's a 112-mile bike ride, followed by a marathon of 26.2 miles.
Wow.
All of that in one day. I did 100 miles on my bike, and it took me 6 hours. Let alone you have to start swimming, and then you do biking, and then you got to run a marathon. You people are nuts.
Wow, and it's equivalent to a full marathon run. Jesus.
It is a full marathon run. It's 26.2 miles.
Yeah. Wow.
You after riding 112.
That's
You're
insane.
nuts.
These people are machines.
They're McKines. McKines, I tell you. McKines. No, I have no desire or I hate running, to be exact, and I just have no desire to do that. I don't know about swimming 2 miles. I don't recall. I don't know how long that would be. I would love to try it. I was a okay swimmer, but that whole thing is tough. But I do have some photos to post today and video of me working out with my shirt off in my gym because, well, my trainer, we like to show off. I'm like a McKine, and I like to see my arms.
You're a Terminator, McKine.
And the final question from Cordell. I chased salary and insurance benefits in college and basically chose career over passion. I feel I've become a skilled enough photographer to make the career change, but I can't bring myself to take the leap of faith. How can I overcome my trepidation? This is a very difficult question.
Tough,
and a lot of people deal with this because being in the United States, you don't have the luxury of starting a job with no benefits, because in Canada we're not going to get into the whole socialized medicine.
So many Canadian YouTubers that can take that leap of faith.
They can, because they have a social network, a social net to fall back on, where you don't have that here. I always say this: if you are doing a job that is like a 9 to 5 and it's a corporate gig, that's okay. You have days off, you have vacation time, you know what your hours are. So you have the ability to create the times that you can shoot. So what you do is you start making shoots after work. If you get out at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, especially this time of year, there's time to go to the park and get photos. You can schedule your shoots for after work or before work, and then you can schedule them for the weekends. And what happens is when you get so busy that it starts taking away from your everyday job, and we're talking months into this where you're busy for months, meaning it's not like a flash in the pan, you're just busy once and then it goes, then you can start looking at the possibility of leaving that job, because you're able to get more gigs and make more money. Shooting weddings on the side on the weekends is not exactly a bad way to make extra bank, extra coin.
Now, I think that makes sense for somebody that's maybe single and doesn't have a family, but if you have some children, I think that's very tough to work, on the side after work or on the weekends, because typically that's, you're dedicating that time towards family.
You just have to decide what makes you happy at the end of the day, but also people always talk about that, do what you love. I was like, well, if you do what you love and you can't make money at it, then maybe you shouldn't be doing that, because you have to support your family. That's still something you need to take into consideration.
Oh, yeah.
What you have to see is, what is the minimum amount that you need to make to be happy and to be secure and to have something to fall back on if you need to. And maybe that happiness is much better than sticking it out at a shitty job just to get a paycheck. Maybe there's something that you can do. And there's always OnlyFans. There's always OnlyFans. Well, Steven, don't you say anything, because there is always OnlyFans. You could make money at that.
Yeah.
If it doesn't matter how you make the money, it's safe. And you do actually get tips in that one. Unlike a few weeks ago where you don't have to tip the person because you paid them the money. Oh, that's a callback. And those are it, guys. Those are our Q&As.
Well, we do have a lot more. It's just we don't have time. Yeah.
We don't have McKime right now to do it.
Now you're just using it.
I love using the word McKine.
Makes sense.
MACHINE. McKine. Mackay.
Ex Machina? Machina?
Ex Machina. It's Ex Machina.
Yeah.
I believe it's Ex Machina.
I think it is.
Which is a tremendous movie.
It is great.
So we will do these from time to time if I'm going away or Steven's going away. Honestly, if I'm going away, I'm taking my Rode NTS US NT1 or whatever the hell it is. And
USB Plus, I believe.
We'll do it from anywhere in the world. We'll figure it out. But
I think it's been almost a year since we've done this, by the way.
It was about a year because it was 3 weeks in. Well, it's when Vanessa was away.
Yep.
Or when you were away, I had Vanessa on. I had Manny on, then we had Vanessa. I could bring her on more often, but it's fine. You're here. You're going away on vacation. That's why we're recording this. And it's still valuable and still good, and we still banter on. So this is RAWtalk episode, what I say, 57?
Yes.
That's 57 weeks of the new version of RAWtalk, which is still doing good.
Over a year, man.
I like it. I do. I like this. I prefer this. I think this is good. And still doesn't make sense to post. The only reason you would post videos on YouTube as your podcast is the numbers. They become vanity numbers. Because if you have 13 or 14 or 20,000 views, are they listening? And it's like, are those views as good as someone who's just listening to it as a podcast? I still think that the podcast thing is where the people are, even though I used to do the YouTube way that way. People did watch, whatever. I don't want to go down that road again right now.
Yeah, personally, I just use Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but I'm always listening to a podcast when I'm doing something actively.
Yep, like driving a car.
Like driving a car, mowing the lawn, cleaning the house, whatever.
Just something that you can do mindlessly and listen, because you can't do both at once. You can't pay attention to a podcast and do actual work.
But yeah, like I couldn't be editing a video while listening to a podcast. Just can't
get back to work, you lazy asses. I'm just kidding. Steven, you have a fun vacation. I'll try to leave you alone while on vacation.
I'm usually pretty good with that. Yeah.
But I'm going to be traveling too, most likely, so we'll make the best of it, and then we'll hit the ground running when we come back.
Let's do it.
So that's it, guys. We're going to wrap it up. You can call us, text us, 313-710-9729. And when I say call, I really mean text. Steven, have a good vacation. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Jared Polin for NosFoto.com. See ya.
Bye.